Hey everyone, this is Claire Thomas,
And I'm Donna Thomas.
and we and we are the Joyful Rebels. Welcome to episode 1 of our podcast. Now, you might immediately be asking yourself, what is a joyful rebel?
And I would say that is a great question. In a nutshell, and it can change on the day, but being a joyful rebel means that you're really trying to do some radical self-care. And it not only is about your physical self, but your emotional and your social well-being. And as women, I don't know if you found this to be the case, but I can overthink things to death. And thinking is not doing. And thinking is not doing. That's really an important thing. And a joyful rebel does the thing. So in a world where we talk about taking care of ourselves and really trying to live our best lives and actually doing the things, Joyful Rebel means that we're going to break it down so that you can find ways to incorporate healthy habits, ways to feel better, and just really live the life that you want to without any barriers. What do you think about that, Claire?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like at this stage of my life, I know who I want to be, but I'm also learning. I think both of us, we're
Mm.
lifelong learners. I'm figuring out who I want to be, how I want to feel. And so when in my opinion, we have these great conversations weekly about things we want to share through Joyful Rebel coaching. And it just really felt like the next natural step would be to share these conversations. And so the idea of this podcast was born. So, with no further ado, our first topic this week will be about rewriting your narrative. And so, what does that mean? Well, we all have stories of our life, stories that we tell ourselves. We're the main character there, and some research has come out where if you have a positive view of aging, it actually increases your longevity, the likelihood of living a longer life. And so, if you are enjoying your story, the story that you're in, you want to see how it plays out. You want to,
Mm.
extend that. And so, uh, by rewriting your narrative, you're not denying the experiences that you've had, but maybe you're shifting your feelings about what's happening to you, your perspective, your attitudes. And so making these minor shifts can actually have a huge impact on your present life and the rest of your life. So we'll start off. This is based off of an article by Robin Castellani. And so we're just going to go over some of those main points now.
Yeah, I'm going to back up just a little bit because I know we're so excited. But the reason, a key reason why we're here is that, Claire and I both are lifelong learners, like she had said, but we both are very critical thinkers. And so what we love in the space right now, especially wellness, fitness, emotional wellness, there's lots of conversation wrapped around mental health, which is fantastic. Now, do we need one more podcast? Maybe not, but because we've been in the space and especially over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of conversation. So both of us are scientists, and what we do is we filter through some of the content that's out there, some of the research, some of the important things that we feel are happening in the space, and we filter through it and then distill it down. So we've done some of the filtering because there's just so much stuff out there that we like to highlight the things that resonate with us. Now, by no means is this comprehensive. There's a lot of other ways to look at the different topics that we have, especially narrative. That one's got a lot of emotional punch around it. But some of it is like, I don't know if we're a lot alike here or even a little alike, but sometimes I get paralyzed because I'm like, there's so many options that my option is nothing. So what we're
Yes.
trying to do is give you a jump off point or a pilot lighting where it starts your curiosity, where you're like, okay, let me digest a little bit about this. You get some digital download, like whether you're listening to the content, but then it spurs you to action. So if that's the case of what our hanging out here and recording it will do for you, then that's a win. So just so you know, we're going to have these conversations anyway, that we share them with you. Hopefully they resonate, but also know that, we are looking at things through a lens of how can we filter through some of the stuff that seems to be sort of nonsense and some of the stuff that really is sticky. And I can speak for myself as a coach that these are the things I do with my clients. So I'm looking at behaviors and conversations that land with people, at least in my own little world. So there's a bit of evidence-based data behind that, but see how it feels. So when you're listening, instead of just going, here's a concept, see how it feels to you. Can you think of specific examples for yourself that go like, oh, this is how I think about it? Because here's the overall arc. Everything is theoretical until we make it personal. Everything is. And there's so much theoretical stuff out there because there's a lot of conversation and research in the health and wellness space that until we start tethering it down to us and what it means for us, it's all just a cool content of a podcast. So again, walk into it being super personal, see how, try it on, how it fits for you. And we're starting with a big one, and that is narrative. Again, so where's this article come from again, Claire? Because I think this is an important one that we can give the link to later, but I like this source.
Yes, it's an article in Forbes. Again, author is Robin Castellani, and we'll definitely share the link to it in the info for the podcast episode.
Okay, so we've got 5 points. So these 5 quick points that we'll give to you, see how they feel for you. But the first one, just to go right out of the gate here, is stop consuming junk stories. And I like the language around that. Stop consuming junk stories. And how can that look? That can be, are you participating in conversations that are talking about other people? Like, do they derail you? Are you spending time, whether it's gossiping or not focusing on, the best in how you see the world? That's one way to do it. I've had a couple surgeries in my life, and the last one that I've had, that'll be another podcast, was when you have surgery, you're up, like your sleep schedule's interrupted. And it's kind of like having a new baby. So Claire, I know that you've, more recently been in that space, like your sleeping is not always like, I go to bed at night, I wake up in the morning. So in the early morning when I was up and, recuperating from surgery, I knew at that time that my mind was really vulnerable. And I made it a point, I wasn't watching the news at that time. I wasn't watching shows that were, like violence-based or things that I find that I don't like. I was really trying to steer away from that and using the time to read things that I found fortifying and nurturing, and really spending quiet time that turned into like devotional time. So knowing that there's ways that we can feed ourselves information that feels good and contributes to our overall greater health is very much a decision. Because let's face it, there's a lot of junk out there. And there's a lot of things that maybe happen in the background, whether they're on the radio in your car or at home on TV or whatever. Be choosy and stop consuming the junk stuff just as a diversion. Because I think it's more than a diversion. When we talk about brain chemistry, like how we hear it, then it has an effect on how we behave. So again, the first thing you can do, stop consuming junk stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that one as well. And I think for me, laying in bed at night, I found that's not the time I'm going to read the news either. That's probably not the last thing I need to see before, I close my eyes. So it's a small shift, but I think it can have an overall effect on attitude, perspective. The second point here, we'll get to it, see the river and not the rocks. And so in this article, they're using a kayaking analogy where if you are going down a racing rapid and you are worried about hitting the rocks, so you're hyper focused on seeing them, you're going to see them. And so it follows that psychological phenomenon where if you're looking for something, you're going to find it. And one of the ways this showed up in my life recently is my kids were in the car and we ended up talking about fire hydrants. Okay. They weren't really ever aware of them. They knew, oh, water comes out of them and dogs like to pee on them maybe. Okay. But once we're talking about them, we're in the car and I'm like, well, why don't you count them? And so now they're looking for them and, oh, fire hydrant. Oh, fire hydrant. Oh, and so it's once you're seeing something, you can see it everywhere. Okay, so why does this matter? Well, there's something called the missing tile syndrome, or let's say you have a beautifully tiled wall or ceiling, and if one tile is missing, that's going to be what you focus on. Maybe all you're going to notice is the mistake. And so when we're doing that, we're actually taking away from our ability to be happy about maybe the rest of the tile is beautiful, but we're just focusing on that one little thing that's wrong. And does that ever happen with you? You're in a situation and you're finding what's wrong. What's the thing that's bothering me here? That's going to potentially lead to negative feelings, lead to feelings of anger, feeling of not enough if something's missing. And so what can we do? For me, I feel like it's a shift to gratitude. And gratitude is talked about all the time. You know, it can sometimes be this catch-all thing. Oh, go to gratitude. But I mean, the research is there to show the benefits of being grateful, being thankful for what you have. So for me, I'm when I find myself in a situation where everything's going wrong, or you know, I missed this traffic light, or my kids are arguing before school, I'm going to look for my fire hydrant. What can I notice that's already there that I can be grateful for? Because if you're really in a situation where you can't stop and think about something to be grateful for, just put your hand on your chest. Because if your heart is beating, you're alive. That right there is something that you can be grateful for. And the more we practice shifting to focusing on the good things that are happening, even if the situation started off feeling negative, well, then our story, our narrative overall, it's going to feel happier, because we're not denying the existence of the other events, but we're choosing to focus on the things that are lighting us up, that cause us joy. And I really like the quote, it's not happy people that are grateful, it's grateful people that are happy. So even just when you find yourself in a situation where you're noticing the things that are wrong, what's one thing that's going right? What's one thing that you can be thankful for in that moment, and see? So do the thing and then take a second and notice. Does it lighten your load a little bit? Do you feel a little bit of a weight lifted? Because that, you know, again, it's one of those things that we might talk about, but, you know, I urge you, try it. It's a little thing that can have that big impact. Find your fire hydrant.
I will look at fire hydrants in a whole new way now, but that makes so much sense in the being able to shift your focus, because as you're talking, you're inspiring me. Like, aren't our brains hardwired for negativity? Like we catch that quicker, we hold on to it because that's an evolutionary thing. You know, back in the day, we needed to know when there was a threat. And right now, as far as I know, and where I live, where you live, and where y'all live, ain't no saber-tooth tiger's going to come and eat me. There's other dangers, but there isn't. The need for that to be so heightened doesn't serve us in the way that it did before. So that we get a chance with neuroplasticity to start changing our thinking, changing our narrative in order to change our brain chemistry a little bit and the way that we think. So, and again, in Western culture, we like the big win, don't we? We're like, yes, I want to see it when the person lost 100 pounds. Well, they lost it 1 pound at a time. One thought at a time, one interruption of gratitude when you're feeling frustrated, like you were saying, Claire. So I like that shift back to the smaller things, because those are the ones that add up. And that's a theme that we see over and over again, right?
Yes.
The little stuff. So that takes us to then the third one, which is expect the setbacks. The abyss happens. And I want to be really clear about this. It's not looking for the other shoe to drop and waiting for gloom and doom. That's not it. But it really is a situation of when you're searching or seeking, it's not if, it's when there's going to be some bumps in the road. It's not if, it's when. And so when we look at it that way, what it seems to me is that just rolls right into growth mindset. Growth mindset means that we are gonna not be super great or have a linear path to discovery and information. We are going to learn along the way. And if we don't do something to the performance level that we want, like I'm gonna eat clean for 8 days in a row and I only got 6, like that's not something that's to be like, oh, I didn't get it right. That is an amazing thing to celebrate, because you got like partial credit. I mean, that is a way to look at it, that we are a world of partial credit that doesn't get its due. So I think that being able to say like, okay, I'm not sure like what this is going to look like. I'm not going to focus on the negative stuff, but I know there's going to be some challenges and setbacks. And it looks, how it looks in my life is I look at things like an arrow, and that's one of my tattoos. And an arrow, classically, if you think about it, you have to pull it back before you can let it go forward. And so sometimes these setbacks are this ability to just reassess for a little bit. Hey, are things going okay? And I can just stay the course and keep running the play? Or do I need to readjust just a little bit? So they give you a moment to pause. That doesn't mean that the momentum isn't still going forward. Again, I don't think life is linear at all. It's like 2 steps up, 2 steps back. Maybe Paula Abdul had it right in her song. I don't know. Thanks for all you 80s people out there that just understood that reference. But again, growth mindset is all wrapped up in this one, in that there is going to be a time where you're learning things, and it's not a failure if something doesn't happen consistently and linearly. It's a data point. It gives you information. And it's not if, it's when that's going to happen. And then we get a chance to decide what we're going to do with that. And if we continue to take these small steps, we're in gratitude, we're keeping our mind kind of healthy and consuming good material and thoughts, then we start to shift. Then we start shifting the direction that the boat is going in, i.e. our narrative.
I love that you brought up growth mindset there, because I was feeling that one with that point as well. And when we talk about rewriting our narrative, and it's important for, living a longer, healthier life, part of that is, with the aging, understanding that things are going to happen as you're aging, but are you viewing that in a positive way? Like, understanding the setbacks, knowing that's a part of it, not letting that put your whole lens be negative and, oh, this is horrible. And I think that's that most recent research study that had come out was really focusing on, how you're viewing aging and how that relates to longevity, and not being unrealistic about it. Like, it's okay to experience those setbacks, just knowing that they're coming. And again, it's not going to completely throw you off the rails. So I'm definitely feeling you on that one. The next point we have is in rewriting your narrative, is believing the best about others. And this one I had to kind of sit with for a while, because we're talking about, rewriting your own personal narrative. And now we're talking about how you talk about others. But you know what? Other people are involved in your story, right? You're the main character, but we've got supporting characters here. And so there's a couple things that came up for me with this one. So the point is to tell good stories about people, and it relates to something called the Pygmalion effect, which is interesting, throwing it back to mythology, where Pygmalion makes the sculpture and loves it so much and thinks it's so beautiful. He basically speaks life to it and it comes alive. Like, okay.
Okay.
But how we've seen this play out in research is that one research study is when teachers are told that some students are the best students and they get these labels, they actually tend to perform better. So it has to do, there's a lot going on there. Part of it is internalizing labels, but it boils down to, like, the way we talk about others and about ourselves is important. Like, those words matter. And so what I'm thinking about is, in my own life, is there, someone who is causing me problems, or it feels some negativity. And of course there's going to be, exceptions to every rule, but maybe I can change my perspective here. So maybe I can work with the assumption that they're trying their best. Extend some grace and some compassion there. If everyone's trying their best, then now I'm not viewing this so much from a negative lens. Someone's trying to do something to me. Instead, it's like, oh, okay, maybe there's something else going on. I don't know that other person's whole story. And so by thinking the best of others, that can also help me to feel better about the situation and the relationship. I also know in my life, another personal example here, my middle child is high energy. I almost was going to say difficult, but there's two ways to go about it. I can feel negative about the relationship, and this is hard, and I want her to conform, and why isn't she, sitting quietly, and da 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 da. Or I can think, okay, what are these qualities that she has? Being stubborn, being outspoken. And that's the type of woman that I would like to raise in today's world and society. And so the story that I'm going to say is she has these great qualities that now I'm lucky. I get this interesting challenge as her mother to foster those, to still, allow her to be brought up in society, but to not kind of, quench that fire that's going, to not put that fire out. And so again, it's shifting the story that I'm telling about her, and it can have a better effect on her then, because subconsciously, like whether I want it or not, how I'm treating her in that relationship, she will, at least that's what the research shows, she will pick up on that. And so if
Mhm.
I can view it in a more positive way, we're both going to benefit. And so again, telling good stories about the people in your life, there's going to be benefits for them and for you.
Mm. I love that you said about, people are doing the best that they can to look at it through their lens. That's the one that I use as well, because I do believe it to be true. I don't think people wake up and go, I'm going to give it my solid C effort today. I think they give what they have. And if they don't have the skill set or the history to be able to have their language and behavior match how they're feeling, then that is the best that they can do. And you're right, it provides a little insulation from taking it all personally. That's so smart. And you're figuring it out earlier than I did, Claire. And I'm not saying I've got it figured out, I figure out what I need in this season, but I think you're ahead of the curve. And I love when I get a chance to talk to some younger women, and because you are figuring it out earlier. So when you're hearing this, I mean, keep going, you guys, because every chapter of your life is really got some fun stuff in it, but each one has its own set of challenges. And this internal work will directly have an effect, I believe, how you show up in the world and your experience. So the stakes are kind of high to be aware here. And we'll circle back to the awareness concept, but I like all of this conversation and the figuring out how to flip some of the script now. And even if it's with one part of your life, that is a domino effect. And that leads us into our last point here. It says, don't plan, do one thing. So that's part of it. We alluded to it and actually stated it earlier. We like a big win. We like something that's big and flashy that we could say, look, somebody did something really big. Let's applaud it. But really, our behaviors are all based on little tiny actions that we do over and over and over again. And, one of my heroes is James Clear for Atomic Habits, when he talks about we're just going to get small things that light the fire for you, that get you to move. Because here's what I'm finding. And it's in myself. Like, I know I can speak for you too, Claire, I think on this. Anything we're talking about, it goes for us too. Yeah. It's not like we're pointing fingers out like you all like pew, pew, pew. You guys all do this and we're like sitting on some throne. Oh, no. In the trenches, doing the work, making the mistakes, bumping up against walls, course correcting, celebrating the good stuff. Like that's all part of it. And that's why we're sharing our experience with it, because not only does it change during a season, but it also changes, depends on your situation and the people around you. So it's very dynamic. So some people can look at that and be like, oh, you never make it. Well, no, you don't. This is all a process. This is your life experience. So that means you have influence in every stage. So being able to do things means that you're going to then change habits. And the example that comes to me is, number one, overthinking. It's really easy. Again, I think this is for women. I know I'm painting with a broad stroke. We're smart. Okay. Everybody that I know is smart in their own way. And then we start to think about how the things that we want to change. So I'll start with that as the topic, whether let's say fitness. And that is a common thing, because moving is, I think, a really key component to making change, because it's a mood stabilizer. For me, I got to move before I make decisions, because I make better decisions after I move. So if you're hearing this and you're deciding where to start to feel better, I would start moving. More on that later. But being able to move then, and you ever have that in your life where your situation changes, like I can't make that class, or I live in a climate that I can't go out and run. So I'm in one of those seasons right now, and I decided to do the 5:30 a.m. thing. Now, right there, half the people just clicked off the podcast. They're like, okay, I don't want to listen to that. But the thing that I'm not that early morning person, but the point of it is that I started doing one little thing. Like I put my shoes and my clothes in my bathroom. So all I got to do is get up in the morning and put these clothes on. I don't have to make a decision about what I'm going to wear. I don't have to find where my shoes are. I don't have to make any decisions except go to the bathroom and put these clothes on. That made it way easier, so that when I walked downstairs, I had already made I do pre-workout in like a greens, like I put it in a shaker bottle. That's what I have before I work out, already made, and it's in the fridge. So the thing is, you're going to pick one thing that you're going to do, because those one thing then leads to another and another and another, and you start getting this momentum. We often talk about joyful rebel coaching concept or lifestyle being like a pilot lighter. Like the goal is to be like, poof, start the fire and start doing something. And what that does is it buys you some time to figure out what your next step is. But you're feeling so good and you've created some momentum that now you're like, okay, now I'm thinking things are possible. So let's wrap that all up here. In terms of changing our narrative, if I'm doing one thing and I'm saying I'm not a morning person, I just change that narrative because now I am. And I would not have associated myself with that. What does that mean? Discipline. It means somebody who gets something done, whatever you attach to being a morning person. I'm just flipping the script on that. The other big thing for me is I just turned 60 this year. And I found that it was layered and riddled all through my language. Like, I'll be 60. I'll be 60. And so that thing kind of, this is territory that's unknown to me because here I've spent a lifetime in a fitness career, and not all the images look like anybody over 40 or 50. And, that's one of those wonky spaces that we're still developing. And look at the language I'm using there. We're developing it, but I don't see a whole lot of people there. So I'm kind of in uncharted territory. So I decided we're just going to make it happen. So I'm going to do some small things and we're going to show people what this looks like. So I'm changing that narrative. So whatever tools you've been given or not given as a kid or an adolescent or a young adult, cool. The people around you did the best that they could. And now it's up to us to start changing the ways that we talk about ourselves and others so that we are changing the course of history, essentially. That's really what it is. So here's the hack. If when you're talking to yourself, right, there's so much dialogue happening up here, so much happening. And there's a lot of shoulds, don'ts, can'ts, like just look for the contractions. If that's happening, it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I can't, here we go back to growth mindset. It's not that I can't, it's I don't know how to do that now or yet. And that's not wasted time. Because some people are like, oh, that sounds good in concept. And I challenge you, you try it. You try it. You just take one day where you're aware of your thoughts and let's hold each other accountable, our friends and our colleagues. Like if somebody's like, oh, I did that terribly, or, I shouldn't, blah, blah, I'd be like, whoa, 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 what's happening there, sister? Tell me again, what's going on? And let's hold ourselves lovingly accountable so that we can stop that train and we can turn some thoughts into actions and not stop ourselves. How does that sound?
That sounds good. I also love some Atomic Habits. So I feel like that could definitely be its own episode. But you're totally right. And I think even personally, in terms of this podcast episode, it was do a thing, do one thing. Like we might not necessarily know the trajectory where things are going, but if you get so caught up, like you said, we're intelligent and we're going to overthink, then you become paralyzed. And so I don't know if you ever really feel ready for anything,
Yeah.
and fear might always be there, right? So it's do the thing. And so I would say that overall, when we look at these 5 steps, and I know we talked about many of the little things that you can do, which again, I agree are the important things to focus on. Is there one thing, one tip or trick or perspective shift that we mentioned today that you could try in the next week? Not asking you to try every single thing that we did, right? Make it doable. Do the one thing. Is the one thing you do something from the podcast, right? Just try it out. Because there isn't failure. And as Donna, mom, I knew this was going to come up. Yeah, we are a mother-daughter duo, and we'll address that at some point. But when something happens, if it doesn't work out exactly like you thought, 1, expect the setbacks, but 2, you get information on there. Maybe, hey, why did this go wrong? Where did this go wrong? And if you're looking at it from that scientific lens, that critical thinking, hey, how can I adapt and adjust and reevaluate and try again? And so these are, again, as mom mentioned, all these topics that we're going to go through are things that are top of mind for us, that we're working on, that we are resonating with us, we're putting in the work, and then we want to be able to share it with you. So we really hope that you enjoyed listening to our conversation today. And before I forget, if you do want to follow along more with what we're up to, we do have the website joyfulrebelcoaching.com. We did recently start a blog. So some of these topics, if we don't get to them in podcast form, we're up there, in blog form. Find us on Facebook at Joyful Rebel Coaching, Instagram, it's joyful_rebel_coaching. That was kind of a mouthful. But yeah, that's what I'll leave you with, is just try one thing. And what's going to be the one thing?
Okay. So to wrap it all up here, thank you, Claire. And I love that we did this. I'm happy, and we can celebrate because we're doing the thing too. Yeah. We're doing the thing in all its imperfection and loveliness and fun and terrifying. All of that means that we're alive. And when we're alive, we have another opportunity to be grateful and to just put our awareness where we want to go. And if we wind up putting our awareness, then that truly is being a joyful rebel. Because right now, there's so many of us, and me included, it's too easy to go on autopilot. It's too easy. And I refuse to stay there. Like I got to shake like a wet dog. I got to shake it off and stay aware, because that is the rebellious act, so that you feel so amazing on the inside and the outside, and they match. It's not like I feel good on the inside, but I don't, the outside needs some help. It's all together, guys. We are integrated beings. We are awesome. We are, influencing the world here and everybody that's in our orbit. So let's keep taking care of ourselves first and understanding how we tick and enjoying every life stage that we're in. This is Donna and Claire. We've had a great time being with you today. Come and check us out the next time. And thanks for being a joyful rebel. Go get them.